Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 2021 AXR Sales Director Incubator, the program that helps you be better prepared for a career conversation to make great career decisions. My name is Mike Dixon. I lead the sales and marketing practice for AXR Recruitment and Search. And over this year, for those of you who are new to the program, I'll be introducing you to another incredible group of sales leaders who will share their learnings from their career journey, give advice on what you need to know to make a great career decision. And we're also introducing a section on some insights from life as a sales director, which should be really, really interesting. So welcome to our first guest of 2021, Leeson Brook from GWA Group. Hi, Lee, how are you?
Really well, thanks, Mike. And morning, everyone online.
Now, just by way of introduction, Lee's been working for about circa 19 years across different cultures, countries, and industries. He started out as a sales rep with Kellogg's at the tender age of 18, rose up to national account management there before joining another tier one J&J and worked in sales and category in Australia and Singapore, was then promoted to country manager of J&J New Zealand, which is really interesting, before returning to Australia to change, country, company, and industry, and now leading the sales function for GWA. In fact, let's just for those who don't know GWA, just give me an overview, Lee, of who GWA is, because most of the guys on today's call will be in FMCG, may not be so familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when you were going through that. It feels like quite a long career. And for those that have been watching the podcast, I am older than I look. I look like I'm about 12, and I get heaps of stick about that. So, but GWA, a lot of people wouldn't have heard it, but we make bathroom and kitchen fixtures, brands like Caroma, Clark, Dorf, toilets, taps, accessories. We're about a $500 million business, mainly in Australia, but have presence in New Zealand, Asia, and UK. But that's what GWA does.
Fantastic. So for those of you who are not familiar with these sessions, you're all muted, unfortunately. Not that we don't want to hear from you. We do. There is a chat facility, so certainly feel free to ask questions as you go, guys, and we'll jump in as much as we possibly can. We're using new microphones this year too, so hopefully you can hear us. So we've just been told we've got to get closer to the microphones. So we'll do what we can so you can hear us now. Also, this session's a bit shorter. So last year we were running these sessions for an hour. We're going to be done in 45 minutes, which will hopefully let you get onto your 9 o'clock meetings without too much hassle. So on we go. Now, before we get into your career, Lee, I just want to ask a few, questions to get to know you a bit better, sort of person you are, sort of views and opinions you have. So let's start with something easy. Now, a lot of us in 2020, the year that was, took up new hobbies and interests and those kind of things. Yeah. Did you get into anything you hadn't done before?
Nothing that I hadn't done before. My wife and I have 2 young kids, so that keeps us pretty busy at the moment. But I did spend more time water skiing, so I love water skiing. I did a lot of it before we moved overseas and a lot of it back home. And obviously not being able to travel anywhere, spent more time on the water. So I started training again to compete barefoot water skiing. So I want to compete again later this year in the Nationals in November. So started to double down on the training for that.
Fantastic. Barefoot water skiing. That sounds like a lot.
When I was a kid, and
a lot of fun. Yeah.
I'm getting a bit older. I don't want to let it go.
Harder as it gets older?
Yeah.
Yeah. Flexibility and strength not quite the same as it was.
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
Sit down too much.
Yeah. Now here's a big one. So there's one thing you could change about society today, Lee. What would it be?
There's a few, mate. But to talk more, and I'd probably take away email. If I could take away email and have more conversation, that would be the one thing that I would love more than anything. Yeah. I think this week alone, I've got 900 and something emails I haven't responded to. And I just love the fact that you can have a conversation with someone and not just ping off a note. I like to get back to the conversation that we always had in the old days, but pre-email.
It's funny, my almost all my career, email's been around, and I'm an old dude, but But I remember when I do remember a life just before email, and you kind of wonder, for the majority of society who've not had it. So businesses ran, people survived pre-email. It'd be great not to have them.
Or even just walking down the street and just having a conversation with random Joe Blow down the street. It's kind of nice.
Oh, I'm into okay, I'll take you up on that. That's a good one. Great. So let's get a little bit into your career journey. First of all, you started out in sales at the age of 18, as I said, which is incredible. How did you get into sales?
Yeah, I was about 19 when I started at Kellogg's. But prior to that, funnily enough, I definitely did it the hard way. So I had some choices in my last year of high school, and at that point I didn't finish high school. So I left year 12 and I didn't pass because I was a fairly rebellious teenager, believe it or not. And then I worked for Romeo's Foodland, or IGA, back in Adelaide. So was lucky enough to move very quickly and ran one of their stores when they were quite small. And I worked way too many hours. I was working sort of 100-hour weeks, and because I wanted to be someone, I wanted to progress, and I wanted to lead people. So I was lucky enough to lead a store. And then I decided I'd go back to school and finish school in that year as well. But underneath all of that, I knew I had to learn how to sell. I had to learn how to sell something, be it a concept, an idea, or a product. So when I left the Foodland group, or when I left Romeo's, I went to Telstra for 9 months to force me to learn how to sell. And I hated it. It was the worst experience I ever had. And I remember going to work in the morning and literally vomiting in the car park because I was so nervous about how to interact with someone, and the fear of rejection when someone would say no. But doing it every day for 9 months that I did taught me that it's okay that someone says no. And then it's okay to ask follow-up questions and probe and really find someone's need that then you can deliver a solution to. So that taught me how to sell, be it quite a hard way to do it. And then I realized that wasn't for me, and I always wanted to be a rep, because working in a supermarket, reps used to look like they had the best job in the world. They would breeze in, have long lunches with their mates. And I thought, well, I'd like to give that a go. And that's when I started at Kellogg's, and I was about 19. And I was a rep in Adelaide for sort of 18 months. And I was lucky. I had a brilliant boss who supported me and created an opportunity to move to Sydney into sort of a junior category role, and then moved fairly quickly through sort of junior account roles to then finish as national account manager on Woolies, which was one of the biggest jobs in the sales team at the time. And I had a point of inflection there that the next step would have been overseas. So moving to Battle Creek, Michigan, to further my career. And I wanted to know that I could be successful outside of the comfortable walls of Kellogg's. That was the only really tier one FMCG that I'd worked for. I was really lucky that I'd done really well and I'd moved quite quickly. What I wanted to know, was it just the people around me that did it, or could I do it alone? So then I had an opportunity to move to J&J, so Johnson & Johnson. So I did that as the NAM for Woolworths, and spent 8 years at J&J. And similar things. So I was able to prove to myself that I could make it, and I could move through an organisation, and that opened a lot of doors. And then randomly, I had the opportunity to come back to Australia, where I am now with GWA.
Fantastic. And if you had your time again, you're obviously by no means at the end of your career. You're midpoint at best. But if you had your time again, is there a role that you didn't take and wish perhaps you had?
No, No is the short answer. I live by the motto that you always regret the things you don't do rather than the things that you do. So there wasn't a role that I ever went for or was offered that I didn't take. But having said that, I've always been fairly choiceful with where I want to go and my path to what's next. So, so no is the short answer. I've never turned anything down, but I've always been pretty clear with my end point and sort of a path to that point.
And how many of those, in terms of how you've mapped your career, how much of it has been you specifically setting goals and going for a role, and how much of it is a role presenting itself to you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'd probably say 50-50. So part of it is being clear and being ready for that. But the other part is just being ready when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah.
So part of it is good luck and good timing, but that only comes when you're well prepared and you're in the place to get that next role.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit of both.
Yeah. And do you have a personal development plan, Lee, that guides you in terms of what next and what you've got to focus on to achieve that next step?
Yeah. So it sounds quite geeky, but I've had one since I can remember. I always change it, always revise it, cross things off when I think that they're okay and add things to it. So there's two on my PDP at the moment that I want to work on because I think that they're gaps for me. So one is I'm rereading Crucial Conversations by Kerry. I can't remember Kerry's last name because I remember doing it a number of years ago. But the motto that stuck with me is the times where you need to perform at your best, sometimes you do your worst. So it's a really nice framework to help have some of those really tough conversations, be it performance conversations with some of your team or just conversations you don't want to have. And it's a nice framework to do that. And I can find myself naturally shying away from some of those hard conversations if I'd feel ill-prepared. So that's on my personal plan at the moment because it's a skill that I want to grow and keep developing.
Yeah.
And then the other one is on a personal level, just helping me find the balance in life. So I've started to meditate in the morning, so 10 minutes in the morning, because I found even during COVID and doing jobs like this, I find it really hard to switch off. And because I'm quite a driven person, I've never been able to not do anything. Like I'm always quite an active relaxer. Like I'd wash the car or I'd go for a run or I'd do something to relax, not sit down and do nothing. And that's just me.
Yeah.
So I'm training myself to find ways to decompress a bit more.
Yeah. Active relaxing. That's an interesting phrase. Someone,
my wife hates it.
well, someone said to me, I just took a few days off of research, and someone said, "You're going to sit down and relax." I said, "Sit down and relax." And I don't do that.
Yeah.
So I think I'm an active relaxer as well. I do other stuff to kind of occupy my mind and body, I guess, to find that balance.
Yeah, nice.
Interesting. Yeah, great. Curious to, and we'll get into this concept perhaps through the conversation, but around mentoring as well. Do you have, you obviously have a personal development plan. Do you have mentors that guide you or you go to for advice?
Yeah. So I think for the last 10 years, I've had different mentors at different stages. So I have two mentors at the moment. Both of them are outside of GWA because I find mentors help me build as a sounding board. So if I've come up against issues, I use one or two of my mentors to bounce those ideas off and say, I'm having trouble here. I'm thinking about doing this. Give me the pros and cons. What would you do when you've come across it? Or they help me build the skills that I feel I haven't developed enough. So early days, I found mentors that helped me navigate an organization. So I had a mentor at J&J that helped me navigate through the complexities of the multinational and how to build support through my stakeholders, which I didn't realize the value of until I started to do it. And he helped me a lot. So that was my first step with a mentor. But I must say, I found the early days of having a mentor really clunky. Like it was, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to ask for. And it wasn't until he sort of helped force that rhythm and break down the barriers and be like, nothing's off the table. Ask me whatever you want. Yeah, I'm more senior, but this is a closed conversation. Like, tell me the good, the bad, the ugly, what's working, what's not, how can I help? But it did take I reckon it took 6 months, so probably 5 interactions to really find where the value was for the both of us. And that's what I give advice to the people that ask me, should I get a mentor? My flat out answer is yes, but pick people that have the skills that you feel that you need to develop, and then have that open dialogue of, this is what I think you do really well. Can you help me? And stay with it, because the first couple would be a bit crunchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I found anyway.
Yeah, I when I meet people, candidates, effectively who are looking to change, I'm always interested in how they get their direction and where their input comes from in terms of their decision making, because the decision making process really fascinates me, and I'm trying to help people think much more about the decisions that they make around career. I think too often people are quite reactive, and mentors are interesting because typically there's a very different relationship you have with a mentor than you have with your boss.
Oh, very different.
And mentors outside of your business, I think, are even perhaps more interesting, because they have no agenda other than you. And how to help you, as opposed to the business perspective, or your boss has got a performance perspective, which can be quite short-term results orientated often. And the mentor, that is not about the result, about the performance in the moment. It's about actually your development, which is a very, very different conversation.
Yeah. And I always found it really hard to be vulnerable early doors with the internal mentors. And that's probably what I found the hardest with my first mentor at J&J, was just showing the vulnerability of where I think I need help. Because the early part of that conversation was, you're going to use that against me. You'll tell my boss, it'll come up in a performance review that I'm not ready for the next role. And I found that really hard as something to work through.
Yeah.
But having said that, if you're conscious and you're comfortable that it's okay to be vulnerable, I think that's where you get the most out of it.
Yeah, agreed. And how do you go about selecting a mentor? Because a lot of people on today's call, may not have a mentor, and be listening to this thinking, that sounds like something I should be doing, but I don't know how to go about it. Yep. What advice would you give?
Good question. I've always picked a mentor based on the skills that they display that I think are a benefit to me. So I'd find someone that does something very well, that I think they do very well and I respect, and it's a skill that I need to develop. So like I said, the first mentor at J&J was a brilliant networker. He had a very broad range of stakeholders and support across the business, and he was able to navigate through the complexity of a big multinational easily, and I could see others couldn't. Like they'd come up against hurdles all the time, but Nick was able just to navigate through and get support, and I wanted to know how to do that. So that's where I selected him, because he had the ability and the skill to do something that I wanted to learn how to do. And even two of my mentors now. So one of them is an entrepreneur, and I wanted to learn how to be more nimble with my thinking and to be more, I suppose, think more outside of the box rather than sort of the standard.
Yeah.
And he has a different way of thinking, and he challenges me in a different way, and I like that. The other one is an ex-SAS soldier in the UK at the end of his career, but he's also a speaker on the circuit, and he's done a bit of work with a few businesses that I've worked for, and I respect the way that he interacts with people. I really like how he frames conversations, how he is present and stays in the moment. And we were talking off camera around respect people that are present when you talk with them, and I really liked that about him. So I use him to help me focus if I've got something that I'm really struggling with, and he just has a really nice balanced way to rethink about things.
Yeah. So. And again, in practical terms, so if you've identified somebody you think they've got a skill set or an approach that I could benefit from, how do you ask the question?
I literally just ask it. So I don't think there's any harm. What's the worst that you can say is no.
Well, back to your early sales days.
Correct. and no, I remember early as a rep, I had a boss that said, no doesn't mean no, it means not right now, or I don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if it's a no, why? Is it I'm time poor? I don't think I can add value. Like, just ask some of those follow-up questions. And most people, when people ask me if I can mentor them, it's an amazing honor. And most people that have achieved a fair bit in their career are more than happy to give up time, and I'm more than happy to help. So for anyone who wants to approach a mentor, ask directly and I found what works for me is reaffirm with the person what you respect about them, what you think they do really well, and how you think they can help you do something.
Yeah.
So it makes it a bit more specific of, hey, Mike, I really like the way that you interview and I want to learn more about it. Can you help me? Can you take some time out and help me do that? And it gives you a bit of focus as well. So I haven't had one mentor that said no. Actually, no, I've had one, and it's just because of time constraints.
Yeah. I think the point you make there is really interesting around being specific. Mentors aren't the same as a coach. You know, they're not there to be holistically helping every part of you become better. I think if you're quite specific on the ask in terms of, I like the way you do this, and I'd love to learn more about that. Can you help me? And you know, that's great. You're working on something quite specific as opposed to, and it may be for a period, and you feel you got to the point where that's great, and the relationship is the mentorship is done, and you move on. And I think that's a really interesting way to do it. I also think, and I'm thinking back to a previous session last year with Caroline Waite at Frucor, and Caroline talked about being really. She talked about her relationship with her ex-bosses, and it made me think that's a really interesting point, because a lot of people, when they leave a business, they often leave the relationships behind, which is crazy, really. And how you leave a business says a lot about you. I think leaving a business maturely and properly, and no matter what, if things haven't gone quite your way, there's always push and pull factors when you leave. But the relationships are important, and the relationship you have perhaps with an ex-boss as opposed to a current boss is different. They know you and can give you a perspective on you when you're not working directly for them. It's probably even more beneficial. So maintaining those relationships and tapping into those people as mentors when you need them specifically is great, and that's about building your network as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never see a mentor as a mentor for life. It's a specific task to help me grow and develop, and then I suppose I move on, or we just don't spend as much time together past that point. But I'm still connected to all of my previous mentors. Because I think that network is really important in life. So I try and stay connected, but we just don't engage as much. Yeah.
One of the things this year we're going to get really into is this type of conversation around helping with planning and decision making on careers, and something that I think is going to be useful to talk about and happens to everybody at the various stages around their careers when you don't get that job. You might be going for a promotion, you think you're deserving of it, but it goes somewhere else. And how do you deal with that? What advice would you have for someone to deal with that? What decision, how do they process that and, just approach a decision about what to do next? Yeah,
it's a good question. I've had a couple of those in my career where I thought I was ready. And I'm someone who pushes myself pretty hard, and I'll be like, okay, well, I'm going to go for it even if I'm not ready, but I'll back myself to get there. And there's been a couple of instances where I threw my head in the rink and I thought I was ready, and then the feedback came as like, no, not now. No, you need to do something else, or no, you're not ready for this now. There was one... when I was in Singapore, actually, before I moved to New Zealand, I wanted to take the country manager role for Malaysia because I wanted to take a GM role. I wanted to stay in Asia, and I thought, perfect, I'm ready. My network is backing me for it. I'm there. And the feedback came as like, no, you're not right for this now. You're not ready. And I was gutted. I remember I flew back from Malaysia back to Singapore, and it's a short flight, but I was seething. I was like, how dare they? Like, I'm absolutely ready. I can do this with my eyes closed. Who do you think you are? And then I sat on it for a week, and then I reached back out to the regional VP and said, okay, well, tell me why. Why do you think I'm not ready? What have I not demonstrated to give you the confidence that I could do the job? And through that conversation, he mapped out a couple of unknown gaps for me in my leadership style that then helped me build a plan to close it.
Yeah.
So by having that follow-up conversation, I thought was really valuable for me, because it was less around, okay, well, Jesus, they've written me off, I'm not ready. It's okay, well, tell me why you think I'm not ready. And then I put it in my development plan of, okay, well, I have to be able to demonstrate that I can lead large teams, because in my role in Singapore, I had 180 stakeholders and no direct reports. And the regional VP had only ever seen me in that role, never in previous roles where I've led smaller teams before. So I had to be able to then find a way that I can demonstrate to him and the regional leadership team that I could lead large teams. So then I found ways that I could get myself involved in sort of cross-country initiatives where I could help lead teams, I could help shape the development of people, which then helped open doors to move to New Zealand. So, but it was just literally having that conversation of, okay, well, tell me why I didn't get it. I want to know more.
Yeah.
But it was hard.
Oh, I think that's great advice. When I'm running a recruitment process, by definition, one person gets a job and a lot of people don't get the job. And the conversation I have with people who don't get the job is really interesting. You know, I structured the way I interview, I therefore can hopefully give pretty constructive feedback about where someone's gaps were compared to the person who got the job, for instance. But it becomes a much more interesting conversation when the individual getting that feedback actually asks questions back and digs a little and can contextualize it and becomes a really good learning conversation for them. I think the worst is when someone, one, doesn't want to hear it, or they just disagree with it, and that's tougher. Or they sit mutely and kind of just process it seethingly and kind of go, oh, I disagree. But you know, and whether the moment itself is not always right. Some people don't, you know, when they get bad news and they don't want the feedback immediately because they're not processing the feedback, all they're hearing is the bad news. So I think that follow-up often is to say, well, look, okay, respect the decision. Can we talk again in a week? When I've processed that and I've maybe got some questions on what I can learn from this. And I think that's a really nice way to do it, because I think in the moment isn't always the best time, because you're just trying to get through the you know, the fact you haven't got the job.
You're processing it. It's like, oh, geez, what does this mean? What do I do? How do I do it? What do I ask? So, So I think that's really good advice. Another area I want to talk about, Lee, too, is you touched on it earlier on with one of your mentors, helping you navigate your way through a business like J&J. But any business, no matter how large or how small, your profile within that business is really important, how others see you. And a lot of people talk about this with me to say, well, I don't like politics. I don't think that's, you know, I feel that's divisive, but it's a reality. You know, profile is how you build a perception and a view on you. And that's really important in terms of your career pathway. How do you build profiles successfully and credibly within an organization? Yeah, good question. I've got to think about that. I'd sort of chunk it down into two parts. One is to build your profile, you've got to do your job well, first and foremost. So do what you say you're going to do it consistently, do it well. Like, this is sort of the housekeeping. So you got to kind of do your fundamental role. And then I always find who are the most influential stakeholders in an organization, and then how do I build a relationship with them that's adding value to them and helping build profile for me. So how I've always done it is I remove myself from it's about me. I've identified the dozen people that influence the organization and help navigate it. So be it the head of HR, CFO, some of your peers or some of the other MBMs in the business, find out who they are and then work out I work out then how can I add value to them and make their life easier, which in turn they will support me. So I try and frame it as less about what I want, but subconsciously I know that I need to build a relationship with these people so they can help me navigate, they can help shape some of the decisions that I need passed through, and they can add value to me and me as a leader. So they'll give me a perspective if they trust me and know me and respect me. They'll give some candid feedback of this is good, this is not so good, think about this. But to answer directly, I find, so I sit back and try and work out who are the most influential stakeholders. I then work out how can I add value to them and make their job easier, or how can I spend more time in front of these people? And then I just literally cut a path to make that happen. And it may be I put myself on a cross-functional task, like a subgroup, or I find ways that I can engage with their team and then work my way up that way. There's no easy cookie cutter way. But I just find ways to spend time with them, then work out what makes them tick, and then work out how I can add value to them and make their job easier.
So it's investing time in that. And there's a bit of a process to it as well. No, it's interesting because I think it's often where a lot of people fall down, and their career slows because their profile's too low, and when it comes to talent conversations in a business, you might be a high performer, but if you're flying under the radar, it's tough. And there's a credible way to build profile. And I think as you frame it there, seeing it not from your perspective, but from someone else's perspective is probably the most authentic way to do it.
I always bring it back to the most authentic way is take your personal interest out of it. If I come to you and you feel that I'm doing it for my own benefit, you'll generally put a subconscious barrier up. But if you believe that there's genuine intent and you want to build a connection, you'll find a way. So,
cool. Okay. Let's move into the last section, which is new for this year. And
watch out.
I know. Insights from a sales director, and there's a lot of really interesting questions we could go into here, but let's see. Okay, so let's start with that. Let's start with the CEO's point of view. So what does a CEO expect from a sales director of the sales function?
Hopefully we're getting kicked out with a fire alarm. Every CEO that I've had, and even current, it's pretty simple. It's do what you say you're going to do. Don't give me any surprises, and be consistent. So previous CEO, so Tim Salt in GWA, was really, really black and white of build a plan, deliver on your plan, and don't deliver any surprises. That was all that he wanted from the sales team. And underneath there is profitably grow share and do it sustainably. So don't peaks and troughs. And obviously that comes with the don't give me any surprises bit. So don't massively over deliver and then fall off a cliff, but sort of lay out the plan that you're going to profitably grow top and bottom line, profitably grow share in the marketplace, and then stay true to that. But raise anything that's an issue, he or she will then help navigate through that complexity or some of the tough decisions. But it always came back to those three things of just be consistent and do what you say.
I think that could apply, interestingly, to most relationships that people have with their boss. It's managing upwards in a smart way. Don't give them surprises and communicate, early if things are off track.
Good and bad news. So, bad news early is far better than bad news late. And as hard as that is to deliver, People generally respect it more.
People often talk about healthy tension between sales and marketing.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. I find that healthy tension is there's always a finite pot of investment. And everyone in the business fights for that investment. And I suppose if I put my brand hat on, I want to invest in building the equity of the brand, which is generally a long-term build, quite capital intensive because it needs to be consistent and you build the equity. As a salesperson, and as a sales function, it's more around the short-term delivery, which can be either going against building equity, so the equity eroding activities, which is price, promotions, quick hit, get the share now, but it's not a sustainable thing over time. So the tension is part ways is where we're going to spend the money. Is it long-term benefit or is it a short-term gain? And where's that balance between equity building and equity eroding? That's where I've always found the tension. And I still have it now, like with the brand team that run Caroma, probably less because we have less promotions in this business, but it's still I want to invest in the brand and I want to put an ad on and I want to get more reach. So, well, that's fine, but if we go into a Reese or a TradeLink or a Bunnings and the consumer can't find it, they're never going to buy it. Or the plumber doesn't recommend it, they're not going to buy it.
Yeah.
So it's this balance between point of purchase and long-term equity is what I find the tension is always been around.
And is the relationship between the sales director and the marketing director a close one, or how does that relationship between the two heads of function work?
I always found it to be more effective if it's close. So probably going back to the earlier question around stakeholders and building your network. So for me, the marketing director, CFO, CEO are some of my biggest stakeholders. So I bring them into the tent. I bring them into most of the conversations and I try and bring them as close as I can.
Yeah.
So while they're not going to know every intimate detail of every account and what we're doing, I do want to make sure that they're clear on what we're doing as a sales team, what the initiatives are and what they'd expect to see and where I need their help.
Okay.
So yeah, open communication really.
Yeah. We've got one of your colleagues on the marketing director Incubator program, Vic Baker.
I'll see what Vic says in the
I'll ask her the same question. Her view of healthy tension might be different, but cool. And at AXR, we have whilst sales and marketing is what I lead, the business is very well known for accounting and finance. Describe what does a great working relationship look like between a sales director and a CFO?
Yeah, probably the same as the marketing director, but in a different level. So most CFOs that I've ever worked with are very detailed, scrutinize everything. Default is I'll say no to everything because that's naturally how all of the CFOs that I've worked with have been built. Not saying that they're all like that. But what I've found works for me is probably the same. So I'd bring our CFO into the tent early. And while I wouldn't share every element of our gross to net or where we're spending our money by account, or I would say at least let him know where the number is, where the risks ops are, what the levers that I have to pull are down to EBIT. So mix or customer mix or investment choices to make. And I'll make sure that he understands it so he's not surprised by anything. And he has a level of buy-in to some of those bigger decisions around mix or channel mix or some of the overhead plays that I might make around investment.
And do CFOs give input to the sales function in terms of strategic guidance, in terms of analysis, in terms of input that would help your decision making as well?
When I've asked for it, yes, but not directly that I've found no. So I would carve that out, or I would seek it if I'm So I've built my annual plan as an example. I know where we need to go. He's been really clear with me, must hit this EBIT number. I don't really care about anything else above it. Hit your top line and your bottom line. Don't really need to know the details in between. But I would generally engage him and ask and say, well, I've got an option to do this or this.
Yep.
This is what I think the impact of both is. I want to go down this path. Can you tell me if you're seeing any issues?
Yeah.
So, and if I need some analysis done from the broader finance team, I'll generally ask that way. So.
Yeah, but but they can act in an advisory type function.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I see the role of the CFO is. It's not really in the detail, but absolutely managing the overall balance and giving advice to the direction of the business. Yeah,
great. From a sales director's point of view, Lee, when you're recruiting, for we've not worked directly in a recruitment process, so I'm curious as well to how you'll approach this. But what do candidates do now? Those could be internal applicants or external applicants. Do that impress you during a recruitment process? What are the ones who do well? What do they do well?
I've always found the ones that I've respected and most of the times hired is they're clear with the role. What is the role that they're going for? So that they know broadly what it is. So if it's an external candidate, they know broadly what it is. In an internal, they know exactly what it is. They can fit themselves into that role and have the self-awareness to go, this is where I think I can do really well, and be able to articulate that. But an external candidate, the preparation is the thing that I always find most impressive. So I had a candidate a couple of weeks ago that I was interviewing for a role, and they went and spent time in the trade. They went and engaged to see where our brand is, how it shows up. They even engaged with some of the showroom consultants to ask, well, do you recommend Chroma? Why do you recommend it? Why don't you? And they came with a level of insight that they knew about our business. They knew what we do. They knew enough about our P&L to know how we perform over time. So they'd done their research. But then more importantly, they cared enough about the job and the job that they were going for to invest their time to learn more about the sales function. And they came with some insights on the back of that of, hey, I was in Reece and I realized that their showroom consultants didn't actually want to sell Chroma. They tried to sell me something else. Why is that? It's like, wow, some of our sales team wouldn't even tell me that. Yeah. So, that preparation was impressive.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think something I encourage anybody within the sales marketing world, particularly going for a role, is position description is by definition quite generic, but to bring it to life, get into trade and ask questions. Be a customer, be a consumer, but put the salesperson on, or the marketer on, or the category person on, and critically have a look and engage and find out what's going on.
Be curious. And the other part, I'm conscious of the time, but the other part was have the confidence in your delivery that you can do the job.
Yeah.
So most people hire because you want someone that can come in and do the job and do it well. So demonstrate to me as the hiring manager that you back in yourself.
Yeah.
You can do this and you'll do it well.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't show the confidence, then you're going to obviously immediately I'm going to pick holes in it and go, well, why?
Yeah. Fantastic. Lee, that's great. Really, really interesting insights today. And we are getting towards 45 minutes. So we said we'd be shorter and sharper this year, but I think we got through a lot there. Some really interesting topics. So thanks for sharing your journey and
you're most welcome.
And some of those insights from the role of a sales director, but also how you, I think, really interested how you approach your personal development, and I think that's something you clearly invest in, and the input you have from mentors as well is really interesting. I think there's a lot of learnings for hopefully the guys on the call today and those who are listening to the podcast follow up. By word of promoting that. Your Future in Sales and Marketing is the podcast available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, guys. For those of you who haven't got on that, do so. We're pleased with our listenership yet. No sponsors knocking down our door yet, but that's only a matter of time. It has to be. And but yeah, all the 2020 Sales Director Incubator sessions are on there, as well as the Marketing Director Incubator sessions. The Marketing Director Incubator kicks off later this month as well, April 22nd. We've got Sarah Nichols, Marketing Director of Bacardi, kicking us off this year. We're back on May 6th for the next Sales Director Incubator with Kim Murray, who's the VP of Sales at P&G Personal Care for ANZ, Asia, Middle East, and Africa. So pretty chunky role. Kim's based in Singapore, so she'll be dialing in for that. Well, I'll be impressed if she turns up. You never know. But I suspect she'll be dialing in. But thanks again, Lee, for your time this morning. Really interesting. And guys, thanks for joining us on the live session. Look forward to seeing you all in a month. As always, reach out if you ever want looking for a career conversation at any time. Always happy to talk. Thanks and have a great day, guys.
Thank you.